can you use a self-directed IRA to invest in a Golden Visa Fund in Portugal or in other countries? So recently, a lot of promoters have been proposing this avenue of using money in retirement accounts, or specifically money in a retirement account that people have the ability to direct where the investments go, which is a self-directed IRA or self-directed IRA, to invest in a Golden Visa Fund and thus obtaining residency and later citizenship. And there's this whole structure that promoters are proposing where the self-directed IRA creates a US LLC, and the US LLC then funds a Portuguese company and Portuguese LDA, and the Portuguese company makes the investment into a Golden Visa Fund. Some of those promoters say that they've checked this with U.S. tax advisors and U.S. lawyers, and it works. And some are trying to create some distance between the IRA and the individual to try and mitigate potential risks and so on. And we've been asked a lot. Recently, we're asked a lot by our clients, what is our opinion? Do we think it works? Do we think it's compatible with U.S. and Portuguese law? And the answer is, at least from our perspective, the answer is simple: it doesn't work. And when we say it doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you cannot do it. You can do a lot of things, and everything is possible until someone notices. But we think that the risk, first of all, that it doesn't comply with the law, and then the risk is so high that we wouldn't do it. So we don't recommend it to any of our clients. And I'll explain why now. So first of all, from the biggest risk are from the US side, actually, or these are US perspective risks. And the point is this: when you can have a self-directed IRA. And a self-directed IRA means that you have a retirement account. In Portugal, there's just pensions. In the US, there are retirement accounts. Lots of different types of retirement accounts. And you can say, I want to run my own retirement account. I want to decide what I do with my money. And there are almost no restrictions. There are some. You cannot buy, for example, precious metals. But generally, you can do whatever you want with your money, and you can invest it however way you see fit, with almost no restrictions. There is one major restriction, though. The investment has to be by the IRA, and you cannot do something called self-dealings. So you cannot make an investment that benefits you personally, beyond being the custodian of the retirement account, beyond being the ultimate beneficiary of the money that's coming out of the retirement account. You cannot have a conflict of interest with the IRA. The IRA the investment has to be made in arm's length, and it has to be a solid investment in its own right. And there's a specific prohibition on choosing an investment based on self-interest or receiving any benefit any direct benefit as an individual from the investment. And the language is very broad. Any benefit is not allowed. We argue respectfully that residency in a country with the eventual route to a passport is a benefit, and that choosing an investment when you have a side consideration that you want to obtain residency and eventually citizenship in a country, it impacts your investment, which is precisely what the US law disallows. Now, we know that, as promoters sometimes say, they believe that you can reduce or mitigate that risk or distance the individual from their investment by having all sorts of intermediaries impacting the choice of the relevant fund. And yes, a Portuguese fund can be an excellent investment. But if you are choosing, as an individual, if you are choosing a Portuguese fund because that fund grants you a side benefit, which is the Golden Visa, you're breaching the exact provision that is meant to prevent these sorts of things. So we definitely think it's self-dealings, and we definitely think it's not allowed. I would love to see how can anyone achieve or reach a different outcome. Now, why can it work? There shouldn't be an immediate red flag. So the IRA, the US IRS may never know about this, but the fact that they may never know about this doesn't mean you should do it, because eventually these things can be discovered, and you shouldn't be doing things that are not compatible with the law and bet on them not finding out. Right? We don't think it's a viable and solid strategy. So, and if they will know about this, we think it's definitely a breach. We're also mindful of the fact that, at least to the best of our knowledge, nobody's requested a private letter ruling from the authorities to actually confirm that some lawyers' understanding that this is allowed is indeed valid, and there's a good reason for that, because it probably isn't. So we don't think it's compatible with US law. Now, what would be the outcome? The outcome could be devastating. So there's a 15% excise tax. If people are under 59 years old, and they usually are, there's another 10% early withdrawal charges, which could go up to all the way to 100% if the breach cannot be remedied. And in most cases, because the money is locked for a prolonged period of time, the breach cannot be remedied. So the exposure is to up to, I think, $700,000 or something like this, or $600,000 is the calculation of the maximum exposure that people can be having. And this is before we've spoken about PFIC risks and FACTA risks. So there's lots of reporting that needs to be done in the US. And even if all of these things are done correctly, the exposure is enormous, and we really don't recommend it. Now, from a Portuguese perspective, on the letter of the law, an investment can be made by a company that someone fully owns. So you can fund the company, and then that company can make a Golden Visa investment. It's technically compatible, but it's definitely not in line with the spirit of the law, which is you're supposed to invest your own funds, and the investment should have no encumbrances. And in this case, you are investing funds that you will eventually receive, but you're investing pre-tax money. So you're not really investing $500,000. You're investing $500,000 that should still suffer tax when they come to you. And from a US perspective, it's not your money. It's the retirement account's money. And the retirement account is a separate entity. It's a form of a trust. So some people say, well, but Portugal doesn't recognize trust, so perhaps that's okay. And the answer is no. The fact that Portugal doesn't recognize a trust structure doesn't mean that the trust is always seen as transparent, especially not if it needs to suffer tax on the way. So from a Portuguese perspective, this could be a problem. It strictly and technically may be compatible with the law, but there's definitely an interpretation that it isn't. And the spirit of the law is that you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to use clean money to invest in Golden Visa funds. So there's some risk from the Portuguese perspective as well. Huge risk from a US perspective. And we understand why people want to do this. Obviously, using pre-tax money is very inviting, is very lucrative, is very tempting. But you're not supposed to do that. It's not a good idea. The risks are huge, and we really recommend to our clients to stick to simple compliance structures and just pick, use your own funds, pick a reputable Golden Visa provider, and don't do these sophisticated, cheeky, borderline things. It could work. If it doesn't work, it could be a disaster.